This is instructions not included. How to navigate networking and job searching for media students. Here's your host, Colin Bradbury.
Hello! Once again, thank you for lending me your speakers. On today's episode, we are talking to Erick Bauer, Head of External Relations with Meridian Credit Union and founder of the Bauer Group, communications and public relations firm here in Toronto. Erick is also a member of the Program Advisory Committee for my digital communications program here at Humber. He and a few other industry professionals advise the school on how to stay up to date with what gets taught and how to ensure that the graduates are best prepared for an ever-changing media landscape. We'll be talking about transferable skills, soft skills that you might be accumulating not through a job, but through other experiences, as well as career paths, how no two people take the same path. And if you want to do something different, go ahead and do it. There's a whole multiverse of possibilities you could explore. All right, thank you for coming on with me today. If you just want to give us a brief background, what you do and how you got to your current position.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me, Colin. My name is Erick. I have been working in the sort of communications, public relations industry for a little over 15 years now. So currently I am the head of external relations with Meridian Credit Union here in Toronto. But my career has spanned sort of the agency side of the business, the corporate side of the business. I've done a little bit of nonprofit work, and even some consulting as well for my own my own company, which I have sort of maintained over the last 10 years or so. So I've really sort of had a real good breadth and depth in terms of my experience. Which has kind of led me to where I am today. So yeah, happy to be chatting and sharing my knowledge, hopefully.
What kinds of jobs and positions did you have kind of on your way to where you are right now? What was your career arc looking like?
Yeah, so, it's funny because I kind of say that my career trajectory was non-typical. But I think in reality, the more that you meet people who work in the industry, the more you realize that, I think generally speaking, people don't just land in a career in public relations or communications. They typically come from other industries, whether that's marketing, journalism, whatever the case may be. For me, I had a very different sort of path in order to sort of get to where I am. So I started out of high school. I actually had ambitions to become a police officer. So I went to school, went to college, and did a 2-year program in police foundations after I graduated from high school. And was really sort of gung-ho on pursuing a career in policing and law enforcement. And I did that for 1 year. So I worked as low-level auxiliary constable with the Toronto Police Service for a year, which was a great opportunity, a great experience. Gave me kind of a real look at what a career in law enforcement would be like. And it also sort of, I guess, allowed me to realize that law enforcement maybe wasn't exactly the right fit for me. So from there, I went back to school and I finished a degree at York University. That's where I basically started to take some courses in business, in marketing, as well as in communications. And so I sort of discovered PR and communications as this sort of possible profession while I was finishing my undergrad at York. And from there, similar to sort of the program that you're in, I did a postgraduate program in public relations and communications at Centennial College, which was, really sort of hands-on, focused on building the skills and experiences that are needed to work in the industry. So it was great. It was very sort of applicable. Versus my undergrad degree, which was in sociology. So, very interesting stuff, but not exactly, something that you're going to be, focusing on in terms of the real world when it comes to getting a job. So I did my my postgrad program at Centennial, and out of that, I landed my first internship. So I got an internship at a PR agency here in Toronto. And that was my first role. So sort of the door sort of opened, and I was able to build some experience there. Went on to work with that agency for 5 or 6 years, was promoted several times, kind of worked my way up the ladder, so to speak, and then moved around to a couple different agencies in Toronto before eventually making the shift to the corporate side of the business, where I spent another, 10, 11 years or so.
The more I speak to people, the more I hear how different their paths were to where they get to, and how sometimes take the long way around getting to where they end up, and maybe start in one place or move around. So that's something that I'm always trying to think about, because yes, I'm currently studying digital communications. I think I know what I want to do, but for all I know, there could be like a hard right turn in my future still lurking around. So I always find it interesting hearing what people have to say and how they get there, because it's less and less common to hear people saying, I went to school for this and I'm doing this. So that really kind of gives me optimism that there's so many different possibilities out there, different career paths I can choose from.
Yeah, so it's funny because in addition to the job that I have with Meridian, I also do some teaching. So I teach at York University, a postgraduate course in public relations and communications. And I've also taught at Sheridan as well as at Centennial College. And that's a conversation that I have with so many of my graduate students. Most of them who have come from different careers, or they've done something for several years that they just weren't happy with, and they're looking for sort of a career transition. And I really think that it's a positive. Gone are the days, I think, of just sort of landing in a job and then riding that job for 30, 40 years. I think it's more and more common now for people to move around and kind of get a feel for what they like, what they don't like, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And then you can kind of career path based on your own experiences. And I do think when it comes to, a shameless plug for the communications and PR industry, one of the great things about it is we have, there's so much sort of, again, breadth and depth in terms of where you can work. So, if you're interested in government relations and politics, you can sort of find a career in that world. If you're interested in ESG and social governance, you can find a communications role that sort of focuses more on those issues. You can work in nonprofit, corporate, finance, really the list is endless. And so it's a great opportunity, I think, to sort of, if you're new to the game, you're not sure where you want to work, you're not sure what you're passionate about, there's a lot of opportunity within, the PR and communications industry. So, that's something that I often counsel my students on is, don't be, discouraged by the fact that you don't know exactly what you want to do. Take the time you need to find where you fit in best and what works best for you sort of as a person. Because again, it's a long process. And even once you've been in an industry for 10 plus years, I still find there are times when it's like, where do I want to go next? What do I want to focus on? So it's an evolving process.
Yeah. Like when I was searching for my internship, I was applying to all kinds of different places for different types of roles, for different departments, because basically everywhere has to do communications work at some point. So I can get creative and try and find companies in healthcare, in sales, in manufacturing, in government. And that's something that I've kind of had to keep a wide net cast, because I really don't know where I might end up. So that's something that's really kind of interesting and also a little scary for the future. It's something that I'm keeping in mind.
Yeah. And I think you've got the right approach, right? One thing, again, another piece of advice that I often give is don't close any doors, right? So, be open to opportunities that arise, even if it doesn't seem like it's the right fit at the time. You never really know until you try. And I know, again, one of the conversations I have with new students is, around where they think they might want to work. What part of the business is most attractive to them? And I have the same conversation then at the end of the program, which is about a year or so later. And, inevitably, 95% of those students have completely done a 180 by the time the program is completed. So it just goes to show that the more you learn about a certain industry, the more experience you get, the more hands-on experience you get. Your opinions, your strengths, your sort of, where you think you might fit in, that's going to change. And so, yeah, don't be too quick to sort of close any doors. I think that's always a good philosophy.
So what kinds of transferable skills do you think would be good for us to try and bring up, to try and highlight, that we can take if we're either just starting out, like from a first job, customer service, labor type, or from an internship? These transferable skills that might come from non-traditional sources.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And again, I know for a lot of young people that have maybe, they're looking for their first real, I guess, career job. They don't have a lot of sort of practical hard skills that they've sort of honed over the years, but they do have a lot of soft skill experience. So for me, I always talk to my students and talk to them about, what are the jobs that you've done in the past, and what are some of the soft skills that you have really been able to demonstrate that are applicable to a role in marketing or digital communication or whatever the case may be. And a lot of them I find are very applicable. So things like being a good communicator, being able to manage your time effectively, being able to be relied upon, right? So if you're given something to do, if you're given a task, being able to follow through, communicate effectively with your manager or those who are sort of above you, but also with the team that you work with and your colleagues in any given situation. So, being able to delegate, to work effectively with a team, interpersonal communications, those are really, I think, so important because you can learn the hard skills. And certainly when you're on the job, as you, I'm sure, know from your program, when you're on the job for, a year or two, you learn the hard skills. But if you don't have those soft skills, it becomes almost irrelevant because you've got to have a good mix of hard and soft skills to succeed in any job, in any industry. So, I always sort of counsel my students to really, consider, even if you've worked in retail or food service or whatever the case may be, there's a good chance that you have had a job that allows you to demonstrate a lot of those soft skills. You've just got to kind of, mine for those things a little bit and pull those out so that you can showcase and share, what it is you've done, where it is that you've kind of shone, and how that applies to a future opportunity.
Like when I've been working in my food service and customer service jobs, when we're hiring new people, we don't always have to expect that they're going to know exactly what we're doing. It's more, we're looking for people that are eager to learn, that are receptive to training, and that if we bring you on, that we can show you something and that you'll learn it. So that's kind of what I've already experienced just in my own time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like eagerness to learn, willingness to try new things, not being afraid to fail, right? Being sort of amenable to trying difficult things, but also take instruction, take guidance, and develop as a person, right? Professionally and personally. That's really, really key. And of course, when you're hiring sort of somebody in an entry-level position, that's the expectation. You don't need someone who has a mastery of all the skills that are needed for the job, but you need someone who is a hard worker, who is willing to sort of, learn new things, work with you, and can demonstrate some of those soft skills that we talked about. So yeah, so true.
In addition to these soft skills, are there any training courses, certifications, or licenses do you think would make someone's resume or LinkedIn profile more attractive to recruiters?
Yeah, again, it's a question that I get a lot. And don't get me wrong, I think that like formal education, formal certification is important. I mean, certainly depending on what industry you're pursuing. Those are in some cases just table stakes. Like you've got to have certain certifications, whether it's a graduate, diploma or a university degree or whatever the case may be. But I really think that, the most important aspect of any job search is got to be just your ability to get out there and network, right? I totally recognize that networking is not always the most comfortable experience, and it can be difficult to, approach somebody that you don't know and ask them for 20 minutes of their time, or ask them to be on a podcast or grab a coffee or whatever the case may be. But I really feel that if you put in the time to, build your personal brand, develop your professional network. So, whether that's through LinkedIn, but then also maybe by attending conferences and different networking opportunities, connecting with people, that's where the job opportunities exist. I find more and more, people are not getting their first opportunity, their first role by applying for a job on LinkedIn. Because as you know, when you apply for a job on LinkedIn, a lot of times there's like 400 or 500 applicants that have applied for that same position. So, the likelihood of you being picked out of the masses is pretty minimal, even if you are, a great candidate. But if you're out there having conversations with people, building relationships, building your professional profile and connecting with people that are working in the industry, then all of a sudden you've got this network of advocates who are going to be, looking out for an opportunity that might be a good fit for you. So, I always say that if you put in the time, like, it really is the one area where it pays dividends. And although it's uncomfortable and it is kind of a challenge for a lot of people, especially people that are maybe new to Canada, English is not their first language. I get it, but it is so important, not just when you begin your career either, like all the way through, even to sort of more senior roles. You've got to continue to build your network and continue to build your professional brand and a personal brand as you grow through your career. So that's something that I think is so critically important. And at the end of the day, I think much more important than any sort of formal accreditation or license in the long run.
Yeah, because anyone can add these licenses and take the 30 question multiple choice quiz to get it on there. It's the meaningful connections that you make with people that will really get your foot in the door and make yourself visible. I know that I always like to try and pay attention to who's around me, make sure that they know my face, they know who I am, try and make an impression.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I think it's not always about, connecting with people and saying, do you have any jobs available? Are you hiring at the moment? You've got to kind of nurture those relationships. So like you said, it's more about building a rapport, getting people to know, who you are, what you're all about, what you like, what you have done in the past, right? Building those relationships so that when an opportunity does arise, then all of a sudden they go, okay, well, I know Colin, or I know, whoever it may be. I know they're looking for a gig, and that would be a perfect fit. So then, you don't need to go through the process of submitting your application through LinkedIn and being vetted by an algorithm. It's like you've already got your foot in the door because you've put in the hard work and you've connected with people.
Yeah, because I know that someone said that people like to do things for people that they like. So if you're friendly, if you're making yourself visible, then you're more likely to be thought of and making a positive impression. That's always what I try and do.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more, for sure.
I know that through your company, you have a career transition program for students and new grads. What's involved in that, and how could we get in touch?
Yeah. So again, this is something that I started almost as a solution to a common problem, which was, just as we've talked about, I found that a lot of my students that I was teaching, they would graduate, they would have the sort of formal certification, they'd have their diploma, but they still found that it was a real challenge to find their way into the job market. So I created basically what I call a career transition program. It's really just sort of a mentoring or coaching program that focuses on, I think, a few key areas that are really critical for young folks, new sort of recently graduated students, that focus on a few key aspects. So one, it's all about building your personal brand. So understanding what that looks like, how you can build your brand both in person and online. The second one is obviously, understanding how to build a strong resume and a strong cover letter, how you can cater that to a particular role or a particular opportunity. And then the third, building on that, is just really enhancing your networking skills. So, what do you need to do to network effectively, and where can you demonstrate those networking skills? So we talked a little bit about, going to different conferences, attending professional development sessions. I know from my industry in public relations, there are professional associations that are just such a great networking opportunity for young students. So I am on the board of the Canadian Public Relations Society. There's also the IABC, which is the International Association of Business Communicators. And we have a ton of great programs for students that allow them to network, connect with each other, but also connect with people that are working actively in the field. So just identifying those opportunities, understanding how you can kind of integrate yourself into those opportunities. And then again, continuously sort of transitioning into the workplace. So once you land that first job, how can you ensure that you are really making an impression and you are really putting yourself in a good spot to continue to progress and build your career trajectory. So those are kind of the 4 key pillars of the program that I've created. It's really based on sort of one-on-one mentorship sessions. And I've had a number of students that have kind of gone through the program and have had a lot of success with it. But as I always say, like anything else, it does come down to, you get as much out of it as you put into it. So, for students that are maybe interested in learning more, they can go to my website, which is www.thebauergroup.ca. There is a student support tab. And I would just encourage anybody to sort of reach out, happy to chat and discuss the program in more detail. But I do say that, if it's something you think you may be interested in, make sure that you're willing to make, a good commitment for at least, 2 months where you can kind of commit to some goals, build your networking skills and experience, and then hopefully see sort of a return on your sort of investment. So yeah, that's the program in a nutshell.
That sounds great. Thank you very much for taking the time and speaking with me.
Yeah, you bet, Colin. Thank you for having me.
And that was my chat with Erick Bauer. So let's go over what instructions did we learn today? First off, everyone's career path is different. You may take one path, someone else may take another. Life is full of twists and turns, and that's okay. Your way of getting to a position may be different than someone else's. You may take 1 step, they may take 3 steps. That's okay. With every experience you have, you gain new skills. This could be in a job, gaining work experience that goes on a resume, or these could also be soft skills, things that you don't learn from a job in the industry, but your first customer service job, or through working on group assignments at school, or just living life. Soft skills are still needed and can still look good on a resume. And if you need help, there are resources out there available. And if you want to find out more information about Erick's career transition program, there's a link in the podcast description. On our next episode, I'll be talking to Andrew Holmes, a counselor at Humbird Student Wellness Center. We'll be talking about how to deal with your mental health, dealing with all the different feelings about job searching, the rejection, as well as the transition from school to the workplace. It's a big time in your life, things are changing, and there's people out there to help you. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me again. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, follow, give me 5 stars. It really does help. Thanks for joining me. See you next episode.